You are now tuned into Flippin the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to episode 142 of Flippin the Birds. I'm Bryan Cameron alongside Morgan Burkett and Eric Reese. And yes, we are here. We are 4-0 for the first time since 2004. Cool little stat. Since 1990, I think 87% of the teams that started over 4-0 reached the playoffs. So just little tidbit out there. But yeah, other than that, how you guys feeling?
I'm feeling like, as good as 4-0 can feel, which is pretty darn good. How about yourselves?
Yeah, I just like the way they are winning. Like, obviously, it would have been nice to, blow out the Jaguars and stuff like that. But, I think that it was nice to see that this team can face some adversity. I mean, they did against the Lions as well. But, they have a fairly easy schedule, right? So I think if they don't get those –
Whoa. Don't throw that word around here, okay? The NFL is a week-to-week league, and every single team gets paid to play.
Right, of course.
As you were.
Well, we'll keep that in mind when we talk about, opponents down the road. But, I'm glad to see them be able to handle adversity because coming to playoff time, like the NFC teams that are going to face in the playoffs are going to be, pretty battle-tested. Like a lot of these better rosters have some pretty tough schedules. So it was nice to see them fight back, and it's tough to throw a pick six when you're a young quarterback and you bounce right back. So happy with the way the team's playing and happy with the mentality. Like just listening to the interviews and the words going on in the locker room, like it just seems like there's no haze over the team where it's like, oh, they're supposed to be this good and there's 4-0. So like, it just feels like they're 4-0 because they've been working for it, not because they've played really shitty teams and are better than them, which that too.
I'm very confused as to where you are leaning with your point, because it seems like you said that they're winning because it's easy schedule, but then it's like they're gonna lose against the better teams. But now you're saying that they're good. I'm very confused right now, Morgan, and you're throwing me for a loop.
Well, I'm trying to summarize last I haven't been there for 3 weeks, so I'm trying to summarize it all. So they should have been.
Oh, by the way, you guys, welcome special guest Morgan Burkett. I forgot to put that in there.
I appreciate it. For once, I'm the special guest. I like the Vikings team, right? They should have been better. That should have been more of a contest. They came out flat. That's not the Vikings team that we expected. And then similar, like even talking about this week, there's a Cardinals team that should be better than they are. Whereas the Jaguars team, no one really expected much of them, and they're better. They're a better team. There's even talk about Doug Peterson winning Coach of the Year, which I don't know about that yet, but clearly a better team than most expected. And so it's nice to see them still be able to handle those teams and face some adversity. Because again, looking at the roster, we thought maybe Tennessee was going to be a team to face, and Tennessee's not the team we thought. Green Bay, I think by the time that the Eagles play them, we'll have figured it out. But Green Bay always starts off slow, so. It's like shit. Stuff's gonna happen in a football game, right? Like you said, these are all professional teams, and they all get paid to play. So, you just have to be able to face adversity and win. So, not that saying that fucking the Jags will be in the Super Bowl, but they might be fighting for a playoff spot.
See, here's my issue with the point that everybody's saying with this easy schedule. Because I'm looking at now, you have the hamster really, rolling the wheels in my head right now, right?
You're welcome.
So 2017, right? Eagles, go in. Nobody's expecting a Super Bowl except for, the few analysts out there that consider the Eagles to be a dark horse. They go against not too many good teams. I mean, you're talking about 2017, Kansas City. They're, reaching their peak with Mahomes. They're getting used to it. LA Chargers, Arizona Cardinals, Carolina Panthers with Cam were kind of peaking out a bit. San Fran, Denver, Dallas, and the Rams. So it feels like it's a balance game, right? Like to me, this is the same exact schedule as it could have been in 2017, where you have teams that should be good but just aren't good,
right?
And the Eagles are taking advantage. But then when they came to the playoffs, like You mentioned being battle tested before. It came to playoffs and they mopped the floor with the backup quarterback. So it's not. It's I think what I'm trying to say is kind of like let's throw the schedule crap out the window, right? And let's embrace it for what it is, because it truly feels like this team possibly can actually be a really good team. And hey, they beat the best offense in the league in week 1. They beat a Super Bowl contender in week 2. They beat the redemption team in week 3. They beat the young and promise team in week 4. Like, there's a theme every week that everybody goes into the week going with, and the moment the Eagles win, it's kind of like, oh yeah, but they only beat this person. I don't know. I'm in my feelings now, Morg, and I have water tonight. I don't even have a beer.
I apologize. Had I known, I wouldn't have brought anything up. It would have been go Birds go. But I mean, like, it's like you said, right? Like, regardless of who you're facing, you're gonna have to fight through some tough positions, and whether it's field position or pick sixes or turnovers or whatever, maybe the offense just isn't working, or maybe the defense is not making stops. It's good to see that there's some of that going on early and they're figuring it out. I think the major worry is, like, I mean, we're going to get into it as well, but like against the Lions, like, where was the defense and offense in the second half, right? And so that's turned around. Like, the narrative for the Eagles up until this game was, shit, they start fast and they start fast enough that we don't have to worry about the second half. But that wasn't the case in this game, right? So against the Cardinals, they fought back, right? They had that OT win against the Raiders, and have scored a lot of second half points. So it's a team where you can't just get up a couple touchdowns and then fall asleep. So it's good to see that they're exercising those demons kind of early on in the season.
This is how you know Morgan missed some couple weeks, because he's packed full of like just information just to spew out. I'm pretty sure I feel like he has like the Bible of Morgan
I'm just
right in front of him.
I mean, I'm listening. I'm enjoying it.
Like, he's just spewing everything out. So while you're like, one thing that I feel like you're really good with is speaking about way better than I am, right? Explain to us the Eagles defense, because it looks like they're actually clicking right now. They're hitting all cylinders. They're using their weapons as they should be using them. I mean, the safety group has been playing lights out to me. Hassan Reddick came into his own. The defensive line looks like they're actually doing something this season. What are you seeing differently from last season to this season, where it's leading to this team literally shutting down opposing offenses?
Yeah. I mean, before the pot, you mentioned one name, and he's really been like not necessarily the key, because there's a lot of good things going on in the defense, but he's been one of those players that unlocks so much for this defense, and that's Hassan Reddick. Now what you saw in the last couple of games, more so than the first game against the Lions, is they're kind of showing a 30 front, so like more of a 3-4, and then Hassan Reddick will be in a 2-point stance, and he either goes or he's just showing and he's dropping, and so even just that, allowing him to, like, how many times have we seen backers be flexed out on the line? They're in a wide 9, which we're familiar with from Jim Schwartz, and then they're just backing into coverage, right? And just that second guessing, right? I think this is kind of what Jonathan Gannon had wanted to do for a long time, and for some reason didn't want to do it against the Lions. But I think kind of considered after the Lions game, like, okay, man, like it's time to get going. It's time to do what I want, and we're seeing a lot more of that now. And it's just getting that offensive line, the opposing offensive line, just thinking like who's coming, who's not. It's getting them thinking again. Like, we haven't faced any fantastic offensive lines. I know, the Vikings might have been one of those, better offensive lines to watch, and then the Eagles didn't really have trouble with them. But going back into the safeties, like everything complements each other, right? Like, I think, in a box, do I love the safety combo of Marcus Epps and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? They have their limitations, but if you're creating pressure, man, those are some great athletes, and that's going to be tough, because you got to get the ball out fast, and they're going to fly downhill and make plays, right? So it's a they're playing very complimentary football right now. It's fantastic to see. And then again, when you have two corners, obviously Slay went out against the Jaguars, but when you have two corners like that, the quarterbacks have to second guess whether that ball's coming out quick or not. Like that's going to make them hold it a bit longer, and then the defensive line can create pressure, and so. There's just both sides of it. And then against the run, man, like how long has it been since we've been complaining about making tackles? And that's been the difference. Is against the Lions, they didn't make tackles, and now they're making tackles, and you see just how far that goes, right? You make tackles, it's a whole different game. So Kaiser White's been fantastic. TJ Edwards is playing lights out right now. And so you get a combo like that where they can fly around the field, make tackles, and then create pressure. You keep them in second and long because you can stop the run on first down. Like it's just a tough defense to stop. And I think you're starting to see Jonathan Gannon kind of being able to exercise some of those things that he wanted to do before, where he wants to be multiple, he wants to give a lot of looks. And so, I mean, it's just a fun defense to watch. This is what we were saying before last year. We're like, this is going to be a fun defense to watch. And then this summer we got all these acquisitions. We're like, this is going to be a fun defense to watch. And finally we're right, which it's nice to be right.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And one player that, I feel like is so overlooked, but he should be standing out like a sore thumb is James Bradbury.
Absolutely.
I think his grade his passer rating is like 18 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And it's phenomenal to see, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Like that's literally what happened when the New York Giants released James Bradbury and the Eagles went there to sign him. And it just works so perfectly where I still feel in my heart the Eagles should extend him, give him and Slay another year. And then when Slay, rides into the sunset, you got Bradbury and you have your rookie that you draft this offseason. It's the perfect, how can I say this? It's the perfect combination going into, the next couple of years for Philly. But first and foremost for this season, like you actually have a no-fly zone. Like that actually exists in Philadelphia for the first time in quite some time. They tried it with Ronald Darby and, he had one good season after that, he just fell apart. They had Nolan Carroll. They had guys that just, didn't fit the idea of what you wanted in a cornerback. And now you have James Bradbury, the silent assassin. You got Darius Slay, it's like Deadpool and Cable. Like that's how it is. Like Darius Slay just loves to joke around and talk, and Cable's a serious guy that just wants to get it done with. I'm loving what I'm seeing from the secondary. Marcus Epps is literally a bullet, man. A guy comes literally flying to hit his opponent. But the defensive line, like, what's fascinating to me is that they when I think about the Eagles defensive line, I'm thinking Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, and Javon Hargrave is the three main people I want to see. Not once do you see the same defensive tackles in the rotation. Like every other play is fresh. To keep it fresh, to keep it moving, to keep moving, but they're still just as effective as the last guy. And that screams so much to me of what Jonathan Gannon is brewing within the Eagles, because it resembles what happened in 2017, where everything was just hitting, the right buttons at the right time. I'm curious to see if they can sustain this kind of play, and if they could go into a place like Arizona, the West Coast, and actually handle what they need to handle, or if they end up faltering where it's like, hey, we're 5-0 going to the Cowboys game, out of nowhere the defensive line just looks lost.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Bradbury, I think we made this point kind of in the offseason about what a big difference it makes to be the cornerback 2 in a defense versus the cornerback 1 covering the best receiver every week. Not really being allowed to do what you want. I think the Giants put him in a lot of tricky situations. And here he comes to Philly. You can play opposite Darius Slay, and you can just ball hawk, right? Like that's all he's doing. He's sitting at like 7 yards.
In coverage. Yeah. He's literally just sitting down.
Yards. He's saying, "Go ahead and try and beat me," and he's coming downhill and he's making plays. Like that's what you want to do as a corner. That's like as an NFL corner, man. Like that's your dream, right? Is just sit there. You have a great rush in front of you. The ball's going to come out early, and you can just sit there and wait. And that's like. He's the perfect kind of corner for that. And then going back to Marcus Epps, like again, right? If the ball's coming out quick, that allows like this is where it all comes in. If the ball's not coming out quick, Marcus Epps can has his limitations again. Like he's not someone who's going to have that range of a true single high safety where he can play like every single. He's not going to play that one high and be able to hit both sidelines and then come downhill and run. But because the ball's coming out early, he can just come out on those dig routes on the unders and all that shit. He can just fly down and make tackles, and that's why it's so impressive. So it's just fantastic seeing the combination football. And then again, what you're talking about with the D-line, man, like it's almost like every one of those D tackles is good at similar things, but they do it in a different way, right? Like you're going to get a different set of moves from Fletcher Cox as you are going to from Milton Williams or Jordan Davis or Javon Hargrave, right? And like they're still doing the same thing. They're still pushing the pocket down the middle, but again, it's just making that offensive line think. And when you can do those kind of things, like offensive line is one of those positions, especially, I mean, every position is like this, but offensive line is one of those positions. If you're thinking, you lost that rep. Like you can't afford to think. You can't be like, oh, like what move? You just have to react, right? And so like Fletcher Cox might have his top 3 moves, and then Javon Hargrave has his top 3 moves. and then you got to worry about a stunt, and all of a sudden now you got Hassan Reddick coming at you. Like it's just really difficult for an offensive line. And again, the Eagles have been fortunate not to really face like a true number one offensive line because guess what? They're in Philly, right? So that's fantastic. They go against that offensive line every single day, and that Iron Shepherd's
thing, like you're right on the nail. Like that's the key thing. They face the best offensive line in the NFL every day in practice. Like that's so wild to think about. Like you have the best offensive line versus quite possibly at the moment the best defensive line.
Yeah.
It's wild. At the end of the day, it's amazing.
A step further from that, I mean, we got injuries to guys like Jordan Mailata. I would argue that some of our depth can still compete with the starters across the league. So to have the starters you have and then the depth to back it up, Philadelphia is going to be dangerous, dude. For a while, for a long, like for at least 5 years. I can say for right now.
That's key.
That's my projection. That's my bold prediction.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you wonder why. I mean, first of all, Jeff Stelling's a mad genius. He's fantastic. But these second year, even third year, or even rookie, right? Like offensive linemen get to go against Fletcher Cox, get to go against Hassan Reddick, get to go against Brandon Graham all the time, right? And so it's only going to get better. And as long as they can keep that continuity, and I mean, you can see why the Eagles draft linemen every single year. It's because they want to get those guys ready. There's going to be a rotation. They know there's going to be injuries. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the game. And then it's next man up mentality. Like Jack Driscoll did pretty fantastic, right? In his when he was on the field, and
he didn't trip Jalen Hurts,
yeah. I mean, but for him to be a guy who might be a third swing guard on another team because he's been able to get these reps against these guys. You feel comfortable about him in the game,
and hats off to him because he was mostly a right tackle last season. So for him to switch spots, something that not many other tackles can do or complain of doing. It's great to see. Like again, it's Jeff Stoutland at the end of the day. Like the way he's able to get these guys prepared for battle is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Does the NFL Hall of Fame have a wing for position coaches?
They should.
That one is a shoo-in, right?
100%.
Okay, yeah.
He's probably one of the best position coaches in the league right now. Like, and that's not even inflating his ego. He's been one of the most consistent. Right. The Eagles, have one of the best offensive lines every single year, regardless of personnel. Sometimes, right? Like they'll lose Lane Johnson for most of the season and still be near the top. And so, again, that's good. But staying with the defensive line, like again, how good has Josh Sweat been, right? Like, yeah, you just have all these kind of pieces where it's just like
he's the sweatiest man in the league, according to Eric.
I told you that was the key to the game.
He works, man. He works. Absolutely, he works hard. But again, it's just another rotation piece. Like, okay, Hassan Reddick's out the field. Great. Who do I face now? Josh Sweat. Okay, that sucks. All right, who's next? Okay. It's not Brandon Graham anymore, right? Who am I facing? And it's Patrick Johnson, who's also taking a big step, right? Like, we weren't sure. Like, last year, who would have thought that Patrick Johnson would be playing the snaps he's playing this year? But he is, and he's doing a pretty good job of it, right? So, it's tough when you got to play a D-line that's, 8 or 9 guys deep. Like, that's ridiculous. To have that, that's riches.
It's an unfair advantage for opposing teams. But while we spent majority of the podcast on defense, because Morgan gets riled up for defense.
Yeah, I apologize.
We do have to show the offense some love because this has to be probably the best. How can I say this? The best put together offense I've seen Philadelphia have since literally 2004. And it's not to say, hey, like this is the best offense in the league. I still think they have a ways to go. But the fact that they can attack you from every single cylinder, I mean, if A.J. Brown can't get going, then it's Devontae Smith. If Devontae Smith can't get going, then it's Dallas Goedert, who could quite possibly be the best tight end in the league right now. Then you have, relax yourselves, okay? I saw those. Miles Sanders, who he could turn it on at any point. And if they give him consistent carries, which they've done this season, then he's going to give you consistent yardage. Now, Dallas Goedert, to go back to him, I mean, he is the number 1 tight end in the league in yards after catch, yards per reception as well. And the guy's phenomenal, man. Like, he's not as flashy as George Kittle and Travis Kelce, but he's getting to the point where he's just as efficient and just as effective. Right. And he has very few drops when it comes to him as well.
There's that one.
It's right there in my mind. As I'm saying that, I see the drop, and it really gets me mad.
Yeah. But hey, like the fact that coming into the season wasn't even really in the conversation for top 5. I mean, the people that knew his game, I think would put him in that top 5 easily. But he was like number 8 or like number 10 and something. And it's like I don't think there's many people that could convince me that he's not a top 4 tight end right now.
I would say top 3. I mean, I think it's obviously Kittle and Kelsey, but Kittle can't stay healthy.
Waller, potentially.
Where's Waller been?
Mark Andrews is probably 3 right now.
Where's Waller been?
Mark Andrews, I think borderline with
Mark
Dallas.
Andrews probably 3, but I think he's definitely 4 because I think he's probably better than Darren Waller now. He's definitely better than Kyle Pitts, which a lot of people put up there.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, Kyle Pitts plays for Atlanta. That's not his fault. So you put Kyle Pitts on this offense, maybe it's a different story. It's hard to judge, but yeah, he's clearly in the top 5 conversation, and he's definitely not 5. So I think he's probably sitting around that, and just the way this offense is like formulated means that he's never going to be the Travis Kelce. Like that offense in Kansas City is severely lacking playmakers. They thought they weren't, who thought I thought Juju would be a little bit better, right? But clearly he's the go-to guy. They have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's a lot better than some people thought he would. But Kelsey's the mismatch in that offense. The Eagles don't really need to be that dependent on Goddard, right? Like they'll throw him some screens, and I love the fact that Sirianni understands you need to create ways to get him the ball. Like you can't just have him run routes all the time. Like get him involved because he is a mismatch. Like he like there's that one move against Washington where he just kind of like sidesteps the dude. Like to be at his size and just kind of sidestep a dude and walk like for a touchdown. It's ridiculous, right? So I'm glad they're getting him involved, and this is one of the reasons why it's yards after catch because they're just giving him the ball because he's so good at that, right? Don't overcomplicate things. Again, with Miles Sanders, it's a similar thing. Like let it run the zone and just have him run zone, and eventually he's going to break some. And give him the ball. And we've always talked about this, Bryan. I think you've mentioned this a bunch. It's just he's a rhythm guy, right? And it's really hard for Miles Sanders to get in a rhythm when you're running back.
27 carries in the last game, I think it was.
Right, and it's really hard to when you're in a committee to get that rhythm. And now we're seeing, okay, I think Sirianni just kind of considers like, do we really need to be a committee? Like, listen, I'm excited for Gainwell. I drafted Gainwell early in my fantasy league because I thought he was going to be like that RB2 that scores a bunch of touchdowns, and he isn't. But like as an Eagles fan, I'm happy with that man. Miles Sanders is in a contract year. He's going to be playing hard. I still don't know if the Eagles are going to pay him or not. He might run himself out of the Eagles' pay grade because clearly, you got to do something at the corner position, and you have a quarterback right now that's on a rookie contract. So
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as well is probably going to demand an extension,
right? And you're going to have to pay Jalen Hurts eventually, so you can't lock yourself in for a bunch of years. So I'm happy for him, but hopefully.
Speaking of getting paid, there was a quarterback that did get paid this off season, and we have John. I really hope I say your last name correctly, Johnny, because I'm terrible with last names, and Eric and Morgan can attest to that.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Johnny Venerable.
You got it.
Look at that. Right there we go. So Johnny covers the Phoenix Cardinals, and he's actually going to help us preview the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, Phoenix Cardinals is named the blog, by the way, guys, right?
PHNX.
PHX, okay.
Common mistake. No worries.
All right, cool. There we go. See, I made a mistake one time. There it is. But yeah, we're gonna preview Arizona versus Philly, and we're in a position where Kyler Murray just got paid, and the Cardinals don't look like they looked last season. And as Morgan attested, they should be a lot better team. They are missing Deandre Hopkins, which will not be part of this game as well because he's out due to the suspension. So, Johnny, what are your feels so far for Arizona this season?
The schedule before the season started was one of the hardest in the NFL. Football Outsiders ranked it like the hardest schedule in the league. You play in the NFC West. You got to play the AFC West out of conference, right? So I think Cardinal fans were realistic. They did not make a slew of moves in the offseason. They re-signed a bunch of their own guys, and right or not, the owner wanted to run it back. They saw the 10-2 start last year, and they said let's run it back for the most part. And outside of the trade for Hollywood Brown, that's what they've done. I think most Cardinal fans are realistic that if things break right, they can sneak into the playoffs. I don't think right now anybody contends that they're going to contend for the division, barring something unforeseen. Mm-hmm. But you could probably get to 9 wins if things break right. What I will say is this, and we haven't seen the best from Kyler Murray yet. You just mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. Hopefully, this is a microcosm in reverse of last year, where they got off to a fast start and then completely collapsed, right? Didn't face any adversity. And then the 49ers went 3-5 en route to eventually going to the NFC title game. So I think for Cliff Kingsbury, he's got to fight a bunch of demons and right a bunch of wrongs in the second half of the season. That's inevitably when he's going to be judged. This team has not won a home game, if you guys can believe it, since October 24th of last year when they beat the Houston Texans. They are 11-1 in their last 12 road games. You just can't explain it. I think they play better away from State Farm Stadium. The pressure's off a little bit. I have seen Cliff Kingsbury out-scheme Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Pete Carroll. That's not the Cliff we've got so far this year. Will he make the necessary adjustments? I don't know. Roster-wise, they are not as talented as last year. Not yet. Defensively, they've taken steps back. There's no more Chandler Jones. I thought they were too passive along the defensive line. High-caliber draft picks like Isaiah Simmons have not worked out. That pick at this point is a disappointment. He plays probably 75% of the snaps, doesn't really have a role. All of the draftees' concerns when he came out of Clemson have come true. Doesn't have a real position, doesn't have a great feel for the game. There's been questions, kind of jabs by the coaching staff. Does he love the game of football? So, I mean, all that to say, I think the Cardinals are talented enough to hang around 500 all year, and we'll see what happens.
Now, obviously, a tough division to win games in. And I mean, even looking at the division, they're maybe not like the Rams kind of are not the team we thought they were. San Fran's getting some wins that we maybe didn't expect. And then even, the Seahawks are getting some wins that we didn't expect. But the route for Arizona to win this conference seems to be to out-athlete other teams.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you look at the Rams are one of those teams where, they're big, they're physical and stuff like that. And so the response to that seems to be with the Cardinals, like we're going to get a bunch of athletes. And you're going against an Eagles team now that has kind of done a similar thing where they've rounded up a bunch of athletes. And now how do you feel about the matchup with the Eagles based on like knowing that and seeing the roster on paper?
Yeah, they're like the Cardinal team on steroids. Right. I don't dispute probably top 3 roster in the NFL. Howie Roseman, very similar to Steve Keim, much maligned with the fan base. They wanted him out. Then he had a kind of a renaissance. It's like, okay, we'll keep him around a little bit. Howie's much more accomplished. And I think both do their best when they're wheeling and dealing. I mean, Keim's brought in Hopkins and Hollywood Brown's been
Hopkins from the Eagles, you mean? That's what you mean.
Yes.
All right, Johnny.
Chandler Jones. It's funny when you think about that. So the Cardinals today, not to get off track, released Andy Isabella, the disastrous second-round pick. Mm-hmm. The ramifications of taking him 2 picks before DK Metcalf led to them trading for DeAndre Hopkins the next offseason. Very similar to the Eagles, passing on Justin Jefferson and then having to remedy that and trade for A.J. Brown. So there are a lot of similarities between these two teams. I would, frankly, love to play in the NFC East. That's not the reality that we live in. We don't get Ron Rivera and Mike McCarthy. We get Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. I think the Cardinals and the Eagles are parallels of each other, but the Eagles are playing with house money right now. They play fast and loose. The Cardinals have not led in the first half of any game this year, and the Eagles are front runners, right? Every game that I've seen, they've jumped out outside of Jacksonville this week to a big lead, and they've cruised. I think for the Cardinals to have a shot this weekend, we got to see Jalen Hurts play from behind a little bit, have it be a one-possession game in the fourth quarter. I've been a Jalen Hurts fan since he came into the NFL. I thought he was grossly underdrafted and underrated. And I remember when he came to State Farm Stadium as a rookie and almost beat the Cardinals, I think year 2 with Cliff Kingsbury, and people were nitpicking him then. And I watched him go for like 300-400 yards from scrimmage. I mean, as somebody who's a staunch Kyler Murray supporter, because I watch him every Sunday, it's hard not to have a soft spot for Jalen, what he does. And it's hard also not to be envious of Philadelphia when they go out and they steal a couple of Georgia defenders in the draft. Hassan Reddick, the Cardinals mismanage his development, right? He leaves, goes to Carolina, and continues to flourish. And everybody wanted to bring him back, including the Cardinals, and he wanted to go home, right? So Cardinals, I think, offered him a little bit less than what Philadelphia did. And I mean, we're looking at it a quarter of the season in, and their pass rush isn't great. They have 1 sack from the outside linebacker position. So, I mean, the Eagles have depth for days in their front seven, their defensive line. So, I look at the Cardinals right now, and I don't know much about your coach long term. I think there's still a lot to be proved there, other than he made it to the playoffs last year in a an NFC where a lot of people didn't think they had an opportunity or a chance. Right. The Cardinals are kind of a poor man's Eagles right now, and so I think the Eagles have an opportunity to win 12, 13 games and be a top seed in the NFC, just because, I mean, the roster's too talented. They're not going to go into a rut because they're always going to be peppered in with some of those NFC East divisional matchups. And so to see how many wins they can stack. I don't buy Dallas long term. I don't buy Mike McCarthy long term. Brian Dable's a good coach, but the Giants, to me, I mean, that's a bottom 3 roster compared to a top 3 roster. So as far as this weekend and how they match up with the Cardinals are going to have their hands full, especially in the secondary. And, the Eagles' offensive line is elite. Cardinals don't have much of a pass rush outside of their 2 defensive tackles and Zach Allen, J.J. Watt. So it's can Byron Murphy, who's been a good corner for them, Marco Wilson, Jalen Thompson, and Budda Baker cover all these horses that Philadelphia has in the receiving game. Because I think the Cardinals will probably do fairly well against Miles Sanders. They did fine against Christian McCaffrey last week, but it'll be can the Cardinals get home on Jalen Hurts? He's really the first mobile quarterback they face this year.
Yeah. I mean, just kind of going off your first point there, that was kind of my key to this game, as well as you talked about it. The correct me if I'm wrong, Cardinals haven't scored any or maybe 3 first quarter points.
None.
Right. And then first half, like I think they have 3 or 10 or something like that. Not very great. And then the opposite.
The Eagles are not great in the second half.
Right. The Eagles that come out to this big lead and then let the Lions come back. Let the Washington look a lot better later in the game, and then obviously Jacksonville had a rocky start and then finished, but for most of the season have been a team that come out fast and then kind of fall asleep in the second half. Whereas the Cardinals, you saw in the Raiders game, if you let them come back and you give them an opportunity, they will take advantage. Now this is the Cardinals team that it seems to be based around the fact that they assume they can outscore teams because the defense isn't very good. And then they are much better when, they know the teams are going to have to pass. They're, again, they slowed Christian McCaffrey down, but again, kind of expected to be front runners and score a lot of points. And so this whole game seems to be centered around how fast does Philly start and how much they let the Cardinals come back into the game. So what do you think for this offense, for the Cardinals offense, is going to be the key to getting a faster start?
They've run the football fairly well. Cliff Kingsbury's gotten away from it too much. Kyler Murray's thrown more passes than anybody else. And I love Kyler, and I think he's an underrated passer. That's not a winning formula, at least not right now, at least without DeAndre Hopkins. So I would say just a steady diet of James Conner, Darrell Williams, a little bit of Eno Benjamin, keeping the defense honest, because the pass rushers for Philadelphia will tee off on Kyler if they give him, ample opportunities. And Kyler really is susceptible much more to interior pressure with a guy like Fletcher Cox than from the edge. He can outrun edge defenders, but when there's big, 6'4" guys clogging up the hole, it's why the Cardinals are awful against the Rams. That's how the Rams play Kyler Murray, and it makes him uncomfortable, and he sees ghosts, and he doesn't play well. Whereas they swept San Francisco last year because he can run away from Nick Bosa on a good day. So I think it's really going to come down to Hollywood Brown has been probably one of the more underrated pickups of the offseason. No one wants to give the Cardinals credit for that. I like the move when they made it, because by the time they got to pick 23 in the draft, the wide receiving group was gutted in that draft. I mean, you guys saw it with the A.J. Brown acquisition. Everybody went in the top 15 to 17. Treylon Burks and Johan Dotson were long gone, and we thought those would be fallback guys in the early 20s. And so Hollywood Brown is Kyler Murray's best friend, dating back to Oklahoma. They're not paying him anything for the next 2 years, and he's 8th in the NFL in receiving. So can Darius Slay keep up with Hollywood? That'll be a good matchup to watch. Eagle Zach Ertz, I'm sure will be an emotional game for him. Mm-hmm. He's kind of it's very similar to Dallas Goedert, Trey McBride kind of dynamic, where the Eagles drafted a young tight end and Ertz mentored him. That's what's happening with the former Colorado State standout. I think for the Cardinals, just cannot shoot themselves in the foot and have a bunch of 3-and-outs. That's what they did each of the last couple of weeks. That's why they couldn't hang with the Rams in the second half. The defense was gassed. You can do that against Baker Mayfield in Carolina, right. And your defense can keep you in the game. Can't do that against good teams. They got boat raced by Kansas City week 1, And I think Cardinal fans feel a little bit better about that game, given how inept Tampa looked, right? And again, before the regular season, games against the Super Bowl champion LA Rams and Kansas City, those are probably going to be losses, right? And so they're winning the games they're supposed to. They were not competitive week one, a little bit better each of the last couple of weeks. Kyler in the offense, he had the pick six last week. It was an errant throw, but really haven't turned the ball over. I think just like, can they play field position? Can they have enough sustainability on their drives where they're not going 3 and out? Can there's been no rhythm to the offense really until the second half of last week. So he is with the Cardinals, I think like 11-1, or they're 11-1 when he rushes the ball more than 10 times. Like they're trying to keep him healthy for the entire season. I get that he got banged up last year, but I mean, you just got to lean into what works. And Jalen's a bigger, more physical guy, so you can do that with Hurts. Kyler, it's like you got to kind of pick your spots, and he doesn't want to run. He'll run for a first down, kind of like Russell Wilson-esque in his prime,
Right.
But like design runs, zone reads, that Cardinals aren't going to do that. They don't want to get him mauled, in the front seven and have him, twist something and have to leave the game, because then they're going to be in big trouble. So I would just say wins for the Cardinals in the first half will be a couple first downs, flipping field position. Their kicker might be out, Matt Prater, this week, so we might see Kingsbury be a little bit more aggressive on fourth down. But Philadelphia's offense has started so fast that if you're the Cardinals, you have to be aware of that. And you have to be aware of the fact that this could turn into 14-0, 17-0 quick. And that's what happened against Kansas City and the Rams, where it's just the game got away from you too fast. You became one-dimensional, and it was over before it started. So keeping it a one-possession game, and maybe the home crowd can get into it, and we'll see what happens.
So entering this game, I mean, a lot of people are going to be looking at this, even though this isn't a way to look at the quarterback position, but it's Kyler Murray versus Jalen Hurts, right?
Sure.
Not literally. But I want to get your take on this, because the debate heading into the season for Philly was, is Jalen Hurts the guy? Can he be the guy? You mentioned that you feel like he was grossly underrated, and also I think underdrafted. You mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Take us on your opinion of Jalen Hurts, what you've seen from last year to this season. I mean, he's progressed greatly as a passer, but it just seems like there's so much more to Hurts than what we've seen so far.
Well, this is going to come off kind of not as a shot on Kyler Murray, because again, I'm biggest Kyler Murray staunch as there is. He's the only franchise quarterback they've drafted and developed that's ever been worth their salt. With all due respect to guys like Jim Hart in the 70s, we're very lucky to have Kyler Murray in Arizona. With that being said, the intangibles that you see with Jalen Hurts, we would love for Kyler Murray to have those kind of intangibles, at least publicly, right? He might have those inside the locker room, but the camaraderie and the relationships that Jalen Hurts has, I think, is what will make him better than I think the perception of him was coming out, that he's a gelled guy, he's a glue guy, he's a workout warrior. I think his arm strength has improved each of the first 3 seasons, and you always knew he could run. But I mean, like, your eyes can't fool you. When you watch him as a rookie, you knew, okay, at bare minimum, he's a placeholder. He's a guy who can win you games. And then he just keeps getting better each of the first 3 years. Like I watch him and I think, well, he's got more upside than somebody like Dak Prescott at this point. I'd rather have him than Dak. So you immediately have the best quarterback in your own division. You're not paying him any money. Will he ever be an MVP? Will he ever be a Lamar or, one of these top tier, top 5 to 7 quarterbacks? No, I don't know, but you can win I know you can probably win a Super Bowl with him, because the roster is so stacked. You get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. It's kind of the right place, right time. He's got the coach that embraces him. He's got the city that embraces him. I watch him, and maybe his intermediate throws could improve a little bit, but he can throw a really nice deep ball. And they're embracing what he did well at Oklahoma. And, Cliff Kingsbury gets a lot of shit. He's been doing that with Kyler since day one. And I think these kind of Bill Polian-esque GMs and thinkers are out of the league now. And it's embracing these young playmakers. I had to watch pocket passers who couldn't move in Arizona for 20 years and made me want to throw up. And now, thankfully, we've gotten away from that. And thank God for Lincoln Riley's kind of enabled this at the next level. I'm still waiting for a supremely gifted mobile quarterback to win a Super Bowl. I think it's coming. And would it surprise me if Jalen Hurts is the first one? No, I think he has the talent. And again, like everything that I have heard just from hearsay, Eagles fans, people in the know in Philadelphia, is that he is obsessed with football. And that's the shit you can't measure. And that's the shit I think that makes Cardinal fans pull their hair out a little bit. It's like, I don't want to see Kyler Murray like doing the video game stuff with the E-clan or whatever. Like, And I'm 34. I feel like, I played video games when I was younger, but like, I just want you to be all in on football. And that, that's not for me to say. He can have his own personal life, but there's a reason why Tom Brady and Drew Brees, these guys were obsessed with football. That's what I want from my quarterback. And I think a lot of the Cardinal fans who push back on Kyler Murray, who are older, see that he's got other options, whether it was baseball and he's got other interests outside of football. Like, you don't hear that about Jalen Hurts. It's all football all the time.
So really quick, before we get to Morgan's question, you do have a question in the chat from Brawlstar B. Have you noticed Kyler get better in certain areas?
Yeah, I mean, his leadership is better this year, absolutely, and I think that came with the contract. But I mean, his every statistical measure has improved each of the first 3 years. So people who are kind of, I don't know, ignorant to Kyler's game are like, well, he's not really. No, he throws the football well. He's got high 60% completion. If he plays all 17 games this year, he'll have a career year. The only reason last year he didn't is because he missed 3 games, and the team has to play better down the stretch. But I mean, his intermediate passing is great. Where he still probably needs to improve a little bit is just some anticipation stuff. We're not to single out his first read. He made a couple errant throws, but he's a clutch player. He's somebody the Cardinals would love to have with the game on the line. You can't say that about a ton of quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins, whomever. So I'm very much in the corner of he can win you a Super Bowl and he can carry you offensively. And I think this year, even though the Cardinals are in a weird way, even though they're not 10-2 and 7-0 or whatever it was last year, he probably has an opportunity to win over more people because, outside perspective out of Phoenix and even in Phoenix is the Cardinals aren't very good. And so for him to take them to the postseason this year, I think would buy him a lot of credibility.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm probably going to get some slack for this, but early on when we were doing our schedule predictions, I kind of marked this as one of those trap games where I think the Arizona Cardinals are a better team than a lot of people think. And really it's the offense that's scary. But I think the main thing that I kind of realized or mentioned is that Philadelphia, I mean, again, they've put up points, they've come out swinging and all that stuff, but I don't think that this roster is a team that's built for a shootout. That's just not how they want to play.
Sure.
They're a team that wants to come out early. They want to be front runners, like you said. So what do you think the key for the Arizona defense is, who hasn't been very good, but have made stops when they needed to in certain games, like, the Raiders game? What do you think the key for this defense is going to be to slow down this offense?
It's tough. I would say, Jalen hasn't turned the ball over this year much at all, but I would say, rattling him, a couple of early turnovers, interceptions, maybe starting to question what he's doing a little bit and getting him off kilter. Again, like it's tough because they do not have the horses outside linebacker to disrupt him. They don't have a Micah Parsons or a Chase Young that he sees already twice a year. Mm-hmm. And the Cardinals' best 2 pass rushers are on the interior, and the Eagles have maybe the best center in football in Jason Kelce. So I would say, Vance Joseph, he gets a lot of flack. I've been critical of him, of the ineptitude of developing young talent like an Isaiah Simmons, but he can throw a couple curveballs at a younger quarterback. And I think that we saw that last week with Baker Mayfield in the second half against Derek Carr. Can't do that against Mahomes. And really, Stafford wasn't great in the game they lost. The defense actually was fairly good. It was the offense that was terrible. I think for Jalen, again, it's turnovers early, putting themselves in a hole, and then the offense has to convert. Because I do think if Jalen gets running downhill with Sanders and company, that'll be it. If they start converting, they're able to run the ball. Cam Akers ran the ball in this defense. It can be done. Absolutely. Don't let the Cardinals defense get confidence, because if you put them in a hole and the offense staggers and stalls like they have been, then we're going to have real problems. And I mean, I would be playing the screen game with AJ Brown. The Cardinals really struggled with screens against the LA Rams. I'm surprised Carolina didn't do it more. The Cardinals are average to below average at certain spots in their front seven. I think their secondary is underrated, but just not enough supremely gifted athletes in their front seven to be able to run with a lot of these, alpha players that Philadelphia has. They've struggled against tight ends. I mean, Simmons, I don't mean to keep knocking on him, but he was meant to be kind of that enforcer. He was that unicorn, right? And whether it's the coaching staff, like they butchered Reddick's development, or if it's on Simmons himself, Like it has not clicked. And it's like that position now, one of their linebacker / safety positions is a liability. And it could be exposed against what Jalen Hurts does so well. Like you never had to worry about Baker Mayfield taking off or Stafford taking off the last 2 weeks. So, if I was Philadelphia's offensive staff, I'd be mixing in the RPOs, the screens, get my athletes out in space, not stretching the field. You can get chunk plays on this Cardinal defense, but I think where the Philadelphia Eagles could get in trouble is if they go too conventional, and I don't think they will. I haven't seen that from them yet. I watched the entire game against the Jaguars last week, and they were efficient even in the rain.
Yeah.
And now they're going to be on this turf in Arizona.
So I know we said we wouldn't keep you too long. I think we're reaching.
No, you're okay. No
okay,
worries.
cool. But usually we do score predictions. Some analysts are not fans of giving a score prediction. But we'll do the honor if you're willing to do it, a score prediction.
Yeah.
How you think things turn out in Arizona, and as well as how can I say this? What's the big who's the standout of the game for between Arizona and Philly?
Well, I mean, I can't pick the Cardinals to win at home because I haven't seen it in a calendar year. I was at the stadium last year when they beat the Houston Texans, and then it's fell apart since then. So I'm going to keep picking against them at home until they win a game, and I'll continue to pick them on the road. So I think Philadelphia wins. I think it's a competitive game. I think it's one of the games that you're constantly tuning into on Red Zone. And, Philly's defense is very much like the Cardinals last year, opportunistic, not Niners-esque, but can sack the quarterback, put their their foot on your throat. But I think the Cardinals are going to get theirs offensively, but I think it's just going to be too little too late. So I'm going to say Philadelphia wins, something to the effect of like 34-27, a fun, entertaining game. Two former, Oklahoma quarterbacks that, I think put on a show at State Farm Stadium. And really, I mean, for Philadelphia, I think Jalen Hurts is the X factor to me. Like if they win this game, he's going to have a big game. The Cardinals could not stop him as a rookie, and I know he probably feels comfortable in that stadium. I don't know if he played a college game there for the Sooners or not, or maybe for Alabama at State Farm Stadium. But I mean, him on that turf is going to be problems for the Cardinals. So I think the Eagles play well. I think the Cardinals show life. And again, if I'm a Cardinal fan, like I'm not going to be dejected about this. Go and beat the Seahawks the following week. Hang around 500. You got to pick your spots. The Cardinals are very much like the Eagles last year. It's like, can we just get to 9 wins and get into the postseason and develop some of these young players? The Eagles are in a position where Maureen, you mentioned a trap game, and that could absolutely happen, but I don't think it diminishes anything that they've done because I think that they're going to dominate their own division. I don't think people are looking at this game as a litmus test per se. I mean, everybody's anointing the Niners this morning. They lost week 1 to Justin Fields in Chicago. I mean, these kind of things happen. I still think Philadelphia, win or lose, is very real in the NFC. The roster is just too good. I'm very much, somebody that, when you get these rookies on these rookie deals, these rookie quarterbacks, I should say, you have to stack your roster. And God bless Howie Roseman. He's taken the exact approach I would take if I was a GM. We're just flushing it with talent. They stole Darius Slay from the Detroit Lions a couple of years ago. They've had an influx of SEC talent. The Cardinals have been searching for their white whale SEC defensive tackle forever, and it just has not happened. They busted on Robert Nkemdiche, and they've missed on Derek Brown, went 1 pick ahead of him. They wanted Quinnen Williams, but they had to take Kyler. So, I'm envious of the Eagles' team building strategy, and it's much more because I'm a fan of Jalen Hurts, not Carson Wentz.
Right.
Little subtle jab.
Yeah. I saw that shit show in Dallas last weekend. Eagles fans, man, I can't believe there was anybody who was ever criticizing that trade to Indianapolis.
Yeah, it was kind of a moment of relief for a lot of people, but also a moment of questions because nobody understood the Jalen Hurts pick until I finally understood it this weekend, that it was completely, Doug Peterson. I mean, we saw the camera when Jalen Hurts got drafted, and Doug was the happiest person in the world. So it makes all the sense in the world as to why Carson was on his way out. I don't understand why Doug was on his way out. But the great thing about it is Nick Sirianni was able to finish what Doug started. I mean, Doug had everything, laminated with Jalen on the team, and Nick Sirianni just took it to another level and just focused on Jalen being the guy.
It's crazy how many similarities there are with these two teams. I mean, Cardinal fans did not want to bail on Josh Rosen. They thought it was unprecedented. He hadn't shown anything. But at the same time, you don't bail on a top 10 quarterback the next year. Had they not taken him, it would have been a disaster. Even if they ended up with Nick Bosa, they would have been picking in the top 3 to 5 again. So, I mean, it's funny how things work out. And I thought that was a very forward-thinking move by the Eagles to take him. And I dog on the Niners a lot on our show because I thought the Trey Lance pick was egregious. And the fact that he's barely played any football. What would the Niners do for somebody like Jalen Hurts? There's a ton of teams. There'd probably be 20-plus teams in the NFL that would kill for Jalen Hurts, not just because of his contract, but because of that's where the game, I believe, is moving.
Mhm.
Yeah, in the NFL, and where he would go in that draft and who would go above. It's really interesting. So I love seeing him do well.
And in the second round, I mean,
I know.
wow. That's why we don't get paid the big bucks, right? Because I was complaining about that pick. I'm like, what the hell's going on?
A lot of people thought convert him to a running back or a wide receiver. These were conversations that were happening. And listen, I watched Malik Willis in the preseason, and I think he's a couple bad Tannehill starts from playing too, and he's got very similar, playability. So Eagle fans are devoted. It should be a hell of a game on Sunday. I'm sure there'll be a lot of green in the stadium. Cardinal fans don't deserve an influx of fans coming until they can show they can win a home game. So
it's fair. It's very fair. Well, Johnny, if you don't mind just telling all the listeners where they can find your work at. I followed you for a couple of years now because you actually were on Flippin the Birds when we first came out. So I do appreciate you coming back on as well.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I am Cardinals reporter and host of the PHNX Cardinals podcast every day, 4 p.m., slowly becoming the top Arizona Cardinal podcast in the country. You can check my work out on Twitter at Johnny Venerable and PHNX at gophnx.com, Arizona's #1 digital media platform.
Sign Well, again, we appreciate you coming on, Johnny.
Thanks,
and maybe, Arizona and Philly in the playoffs, we'll talk again.
Would love that. Would love that. Sign up for that today. See if
Looking forward to it.
All right, take it easy. Well, guys, that was Johnny Venerable from the PHNX Cardinals. And yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of pressure in this next segment because Morgan, if I'm not mistaken, I thought about this a lot during the podcast because I was like, when was the last time Morgan was on a podcast?
Vikings.
And it was the Vikings, right? And somebody was saying, like, Twitter was after you, Morgan. It was either you or Eric.
Both of us. I think me and Eric went against the Eagles.
Yes, and you guys picked the Vikings to win or something like that. Somebody picked the Vikings to win. Twitter was after you guys on Flipping the Birds. Morgan has not been seen
I actually believe it was everybody on this
I think you
show,
did too, Brian. I think you did too.
I wasn't here.
Except for Forno. Except for Tyler.
Brian wasn't here.
I wasn't on the pod.
It was Zach.
Yeah.
It was the three of us and then Tyler.
I can't get over the fact that I took Kirk Cousins on a Monday night football game in general. Like that, I don't understand that. I don't know where my head was at, but our guest was very convincing, man. And he did a really good job convincing me. Yeah. And I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm never going to let it happen again. I'm saying that here and now.
They came out hot, man. Like it was more so Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook. I couldn't stop talking about it on that podcast. I'm not going to stop talking about it now. It's never really going to be Kirk Cousins. I know Kirk Cousins has to throw the ball to Jefferson, but Jefferson will get open for any quarterback, even Josh Rosen, which I never understood, by the way.
I mean, it is what it is. Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins, but as Eagles fans, we know what he looked like when he looked good in Washington, right?
Right.
That's a dude that can get the ball to his playmakers, and we didn't really know what the safety. Anyways, we can go on and on about it.
Well, check this out, Morgan. You've been gone so long that Brawster B had you confused with Chris. Last week we spoke about. I think Chris came up because Chris gave us an idea or something, and they had. That's how long you've been gone, Morgan. You ran away because of the Vikings.
That's crazy. You can't put that on. That's not. I just been busy, man. It hasn't been that.
Morgan's been texting me on the side saying, "Bro, I can't show my face yet."
Really sad. Really sad. I was gonna come on with a wig today, but shit.
All right, guys.
I kind of feel bad because I disappeared last week too.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It was me.
Oh, did you pick the Jags?
No, I mean I wasn't on the show to make a prediction, but Jags never entered my mind as a team that was going to win. No. Wait, who did I?
It would have been the Washington game.
It was Washington.
You picked Washington?
No. I picked only Minnesota. I would never pick. Why would I pick Washington?
All right, I'm glad.
I hope you guys are ready for next week because it's Cowboys week.
I'm not picking the Cowboys either, ever. Dude, we could go in there with like a punter, like Aaron Sipos is our quarterback. Eagles by 30. I'm never picking the Cowboys.
Yeah, We got a familiar guest on next week too, so that should be
Oh
fun.
yes. All
Oh,
right,
yeah.
nice. Oh, I already know you're talking about. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right. I'm not gonna go first because I'm very
I'll go
curious.
first.
I'm ready. Yeah. So
I'll
Bird,
redeem
you go
myself.
first. It's been longer for you, but I'll go right after you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the way this game is going to go is the Eagles are going to come out swinging, and as they do, and I think the run game is going to play a factor, and I think just dumping the ball off early to AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert is going to play a factor, and then eventually, Smitty's going to start opening up windows in the back and then all the digs and stuff like that, and it's just going to be what we've seen from the Eagles offense. It's not what I'm concerned about. I think it's probably going to be like 21-24 to like it might be nothing, to be honest, like 3, maybe 10. But what I am worried about is that second half. So I think the final score is probably going to be something in the range of like 31-24. But I think there's going to be moments in that game where we are legitimately concerned that the Cardinals might come back. And somehow the Eagles have to figure out a way. Like there was times last year, for example, where there was games where we started to convince ourselves about the defenses because they were shutting teams down in the second half. And we haven't really been able to do that well outside of the Washington game and the Minnesota game. But again, like I think that like again, it's Kirk Cousins on Monday night. I should be telling myself this, but he's just never going to get it going. And then Washington, man, like they still scored in the second half, right? And that's the team you got to shut down, right? Like they can't score any points. So the Cardinals team, this offense is still potent. What I really worry about is Hollywood Brown, man. Like again, like we said, the safety deal has been good because the ball has been coming out early. But this is a guy that can take the top off your defense just by running. Like within five, like if this guy's gonna be open within the first 5 yards, like he's that fast. If he's got an angle on that guy, like you just throw it over top. So that's my biggest concern. Darius Slay was banged up last week. It seems like he's gonna be good to go, but I don't know if he's gonna travel. He probably won't. They're probably fine with Bradbury, and like that's not a great matchup either. So I think that in the second half there's gonna be some concerns, but I think 31-24 ish. Maybe 31-27, maybe 34-27, like Johnny said, but it's going to be something in that range, and I think it's going to be a tale of two halves where the Eagles dominate the first half and then the Cardinals kind of come back in the second half.
I was thinking sort of the same range you were saying. To give a score to it, I would say probably 28-24. I look at these two teams as pretty similar, and I think we were kind of talking about that, pretty much in this entire show. The Eagles, I think, have an advantage in all the places that they're similar to Arizona. To that, it should be a close game. Kyler Murray is hard to contain, even though Jalen Hurts has more weapons than Kyler Murray does. As far as throwing is concerned, the Eagles have the best rushing attack. Or if they're not statistically like actually the first, in my mind, they're the best because I haven't seen anybody stop them. They've been the motor for this potent offense.
Right.
So until someone stops them, in my mind, they're the best. And I know that sounds homer as hell, but it is. So it's anyway, but it's absolutely fine. I'll take it. My thing is 28-24. I'm sticking to those guns. Philadelphia.
All right, guys. So, I mean, I don't know if Morgan, have you ever seen Game of Thrones? Game of Thrones?
Yep.
All right. You guys remember Arya Stark when she was going through her transformation where she'll be sleeping and she'll be whispering the names of all the people she was going to kill?
Yep.
So you guys remember the list that Sims put out, leaving Jalen Hurts off the top QB list?
Yo, you're right.
I feel like Jalen Hurts goes to sleep every week saying Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Carson Wentz, Trevor Lawrence, like just saying names after names. And he's taking down Jared Goff, former Super Bowl playing, quarterback.
Former first overall pick.
Yes. He's taking out Carson Wentz, number 2 overall pick, former franchise QB of the Eagles. Taking out Kirk Cousins, the guy who got that loan contract, the guaranteed contract that nobody can get rid of now. And then he's taking out the promised one, Trevor Lawrence. And I feel like Kyler Murray is the one quarterback that he's singling out because it's kind of like Oklahoma, and this guy is supposed to be the better version of me. I think Jalen Hurts has a huge chip on his shoulder because they lost that first game in his rookie season to the Cardinals, and he put up monster numbers. I think now he goes in there. He has AJ Brown. He has Devontae Smith. He has a peaking Dallas Goedert. He has a hungry Miles Sanders, and he has Nick Sirianni behind him. And I feel like this game is, it's gonna be a lot closer than it should be. But I think, and I always revert to this game, I think this is gonna be a Chargers versus Eagles game all over again. But this time it's gonna be Jalen Hurts putting the nail in the coffin. I personally think that Hurts has a chip on his shoulder going into this game because, hey, a lot of these quarterbacks he's facing this year is the guys that are ranked above him, according to every single analyst. Jalen Hurts couldn't pass like Kyler Murray. Now he's the better passer. Jalen Hurts can't move like Lamar Jackson. He's just as good as Lamar running. So it's going to be a close game in my opinion, but I personally think it's going to be a statement game, and I think it's a statement win. I think this game ends up being 28-17 Philly. But it's gonna be a lot closer than it feels, just because I think heading into the fourth quarter is when the Eagles start to find a groove and stretch it out.
Yep,
that makes total sense. And yeah, I think if you're Hurts and you see that that list that Sims put out, I mean, I'm probably going to tape it right next to where my head rests, when I sleep, and I'm going to stare at a wall blankly like a fucking criminal. And yeah, that's how it's going to go. Like I don't know. Like what that has. I looked at that and it's just as criminal to leave him completely off a list. Completely. He's never done anything that would warrant him being a bad quarterback. He had a lot of things to improve at worst, and here he is, quite frankly, the top 3 quarterback in the league right now. I mean, he didn't fool anybody. We all kind of knew that he was going to be good. We just didn't think he'd be an MVP type of guy this quick.
It's weird. This team kind of echoes the Super Bowl team in a lot of ways, and I'm not putting that mojo in the air, but there's a lot of underdogs on this team, right? Like Jalen Hurts is an underdog. I don't think Devontae Smith gets the credit he deserves. AJ Brown for years has been overlooked. He should be in that top 5 receiver.
Let's not forget AJ Brown. When they traded him, there's a floating rumor out there. Titans gave up on him because his knees were failing him. We're giving out.
Right.
I don't know about you, but he's been dragging freaking players.
You got Dallas Goedert, who should be in
he's got pretty good
top
knees.
5 conversation. I agree. But you got Dallas Goedert. You got Fletcher Cox. Everyone thinks he's past his prime. You got Jason Kelce, who should be everyone should talk about Jason Kelce as the best center in the league. I don't know why they don't. But again, even I don't know if you guys heard this on the Jags podcast or Jags game. They're like, oh, I think Jason Kelce is the number 1 center in the league. He's been the number 1 center in the league. There shouldn't have been a debate ever. The last 5 years, this man has been the best center in the league.
Yes.
Anyways, I can go off on a rant, but it feels like there's a lot of players on this team with a chip on their shoulder, and I think that's really helping them.
I think they carry that chip in. And listen, let's be honest. If Philly gets the number 1 seed, nobody's coming to Philly and winning. I'm sorry. This isn't Nick Foles when the Saints came out here and Nick was a rookie. No, you're not beating Philly in Philly. That's the one thing teams need to avoid. You can't come into this hostile environment thinking you're going to sneak a win out of here in playoff time. And that's going to be such a scary sight for opposing teams. Not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, if that does happen, which it looks like a strong possibility that it will.
Bryan, I'm not going to sleep tonight if you keep going. You got to stop.
I'm sorry. I'm
going to get so excited.
Yeah, you know what? I got to stop these little,
I'm already looking for my parking spot right off Broad. So, parade time, where I'm at.
I'm sleeping underneath a Rocky statue.
I might have to come to Philly if there's another parade.
Oh, hell yeah. We got to make it happen.
The first one was dope.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, so we all picked Philly to win. It's going to be an entertaining game. And we'll be back next week for Dallas week. It's gonna be a big week. A lot of chatter.
I'm ready.
Real quick to anyone Canadian, happy Thanksgiving this weekend. I know you guys have a different Thanksgiving, but we don't get enough love. So happy Thanksgiving this weekend.
Oh, well, happy Thanksgiving to you guys.
Happy early givings.
Do you guys eat the same foods as us? I mean, really?
Yeah,
we like stuffing, turkey,
moose, beaver.
Is it Canada Goose?
Yeah, Canada Goose. No, it's all the same, man. Same holiday.
Moose beef, I hate you. Anyways, we'll see you guys next week. I'm Bryan Cameron. He's Morgan Burkett alongside Eric Reese, and we're flipping the birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Yes, sir.